Hello everybody. So in today's video, I thought we would test out a new crockpot recipe that I found. This is a baked pierogi sausage casserole in the crockpot. I thought it sounded interesting and thought I'd give it a try. So to start out with, I'm just going to saute, this is some bacon grease that I'm using, and I'm about to chop up an onion and I'm using some cheese smokies, but in the original recipe they use kielbasa sausage, but I'm sure any kind of sausage would work fine with this. So I'm just dicing up a medium yellow onion here, and I'm just going to give it a fine dice. If you wanted to do slices, I think that would be fine too, but texture wise, I wanted to dice it. Once I was done dicing up the onion, I just pour it right into the bacon grease to start sauteing while I dice up my cheese smokies here. I decided to saute everything in bacon grease just to give it a little bit more bacon flavor without using actual bacon. Once I'm done slicing them up, I just start adding them to the pan to start getting some browning and some nice color on them. I want to get like a caramelized texture, a browned nice texture on the outside of the smokies. I think it'll give it more and in-depth flavor. To get a nice browned texture to the smokies and the onions, it took probably about 15 minutes on medium heat. It was like a nice slow process. About halfway through, I decided to add some garlic to this recipe. The recipe doesn't call for this. I added this just for some extra flavor. Here I just wanted to give you guys a little look on the nice browned texture on the smokies just before I decided to shut them off here. So for this recipe, you want to take about 3 cups of broth. You could use any kind of broth. You could use vegetable broth, chicken broth. Here I'm using beef broth. It's just what I had on hand. I'm actually running out of broth, so I need to make some. But you want to put about 3 cups in the bottom of your slow cooker. I'm using homemade beef stock. You can use boughten, that's perfectly fine. You want to take a 1/4 cup and put it in a measuring cup and put it off to the side, and we're going to use that later on in the recipe. Now you want to take either 2 boxes of pierogies or 1 big bag like this, and you want to start layering them into the crock pot. I'm using potato cheddar pierogies. You can use whatever kind you like. So you want to put some in the bottom, and then you want to layer it with your cheese and a layer of the smokies. I do have some final thoughts on this recipe and the process of making this recipe that I will share a little bit later on in the video here. When you're layering the cheese, you want to make sure to save about a 1/2 cup or so for the top of the pierogies later for the final layer. Here I'm just layering the smokies, trying to make them somewhat even and saving some for another layer. Then you just want to continue the layering process until you run out of product or room, whichever comes first. So for this recipe, you want to cook it for 3 to 4 hours on low or 6 hours on high. I chose to do 4 hours on low. So this is just a close-up look of what it looked like after it was all layered and before it really started to cook. So about halfway through, I decided to come and try and see if I could try and stir it without breaking up the pierogies and breaking them apart. I didn't get too far on this. They were starting to turn quite soft on the bottom. I think mainly because of the chicken stock that's in this recipe. So I think this is a good time to start sharing some of my thoughts on this recipe. So the final product is good. The taste is delicious. I think the recipe itself is very good. The only issue I have with this recipe is the texture of the casserole when it's done being cooked. So I'll share more in a second here. So this second part here is about 30 minutes before the end of the cooking process. You want to take the package of cream cheese and you want to put it into the 1 cup of chicken stock that you have set aside. And then you can either put it in a saucepan on the stove and melt them together until they're smooth, or you can put it in the microwave. The microwave is the easiest. And then you want to melt them together and stir it until it's nice and smooth. This is going to create a really nice, creamy, cheesy sauce that's going to be poured on top. I was a little nervous about the liquid because there's already so much liquid in this recipe, but this part turns out perfectly. So here I just warmed it up. I warmed up about half of the package. I wasn't sure I was going to use the whole package, but I did end up using the whole package and just putting it into the warm liquid and stirring it all together. So I'm just stirring this up, trying to make sure it's nice and smooth and doesn't have any lumps, and turning it into a nice creamy sauce here. Once it's nice and smooth, you want to pour it over the pierogi mixture and let it seep down into the bottom. I do take my spoon and kind of take it along the sides of the crock pot, you'll see here in a second, just to try and make sure some of the sauce gets down into the middle and into the center of the pierogis. So I think this is a good time to continue with my thoughts on this recipe. The flavor of this recipe is delicious. I have no complaints about the flavor. The only complaint that I have about this recipe is the texture, the finished texture. I think because it calls for 3 cups of chicken stock in the bottom of the crock pot, and then you're layering the pierogis into it, the finished product ends up being quite gummy on the bottom. The texture of the pierogis ends up quite gummy. And I think if I was ever to make this recipe again, I probably wouldn't do it in the crock pot. I think I would do it in the oven. I think I would bake it in a casserole dish without the chicken stock. I think I would probably layer some butter on the bottom of the baking pan. I'm just topping this here with some shredded cheese and then I'm letting it finish baking. But I would finish it with some butter on the bottom, layer the pierogis in, layer the cheese and the smokies, and then I would pour the sauce on the top at the very end and bake the cheese on top. I think that would be a far better texture in the end than what happened with the chicken stock. That's just my recommendation. Overall, I enjoyed this recipe, and I hope you guys give it a try in the oven, and I hope you enjoyed watching the video, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.